I thought I had everything a man could ask for, and yet the one thing that mattered most slipped through my hands so quietly I didn't even notice it was gone. My name is David. I'm 77 years old, and it took me a lifetime of winning to realize what I had truly lost. When I was young, success had a very clear shape in my mind. It looked like a good job, a steady income, a respected name in the community. I believed if I could build those things, everything else would fall into place on its own. And for a long time it seemed like I was right. I started working early, long before I understood what I was trading away. At first it felt noble. I told myself I was doing it for my family, for a better future, for stability. I remember the pride I felt bringing home my first proper paycheck, placing it on the table as if it proved something important about who I was becoming. As the years went on, the hours grew longer, and so did my ambitions. I moved from one opportunity to the next, always chasing something just a little bigger, a better position, a higher salary, more recognition. Each step felt justified at the time. I kept telling myself just a few more years of this and then I'll slow down. Then I'll have time. But time doesn't wait for promises like that. I had a wife who was patient in ways I didn't fully appreciate back then. She never complained loudly, never demanded more than I could give, at least not in words. But there were small things I missed. Dinners that went cold, conversations that ended before they really began, moments where she looked at me, not with anger but with a kind of quiet distance I chose not to see. We had children too. I remember the day my son tried to show me a drawing he made. I was sitting at the table, papers spread out in front of me, my mind somewhere else entirely. He stood there for a while, holding that paper, waiting. I told him, "Not now. I'm busy." It didn't seem like a big moment at the time. It was just one of many small dismissals. I don't remember what the drawing looked like anymore. That's the part that stays with me. There were birthdays I attended but didn't really experience, sitting there with my thoughts still tied to work. There were school events I missed completely, always for a reason that sounded important in the moment. I convinced myself that providing was enough, that my presence was optional as long as my efforts were visible in other ways. And for many years, the world rewarded me for thinking like that. Promotions came. People respected me. My name carried weight in places where it mattered professionally. I built a life that looked solid from the outside, the kind of life others would point to and say he did well. By the time I reached my 60s, I had more than I ever imagined I would. The house was paid for. The savings were there. The responsibilities that once kept me running had finally started to ease. And for the first time, I thought, now I can slow down. Now I can enjoy what I built. But when I turned around, there was a silence I didn't recognize. My children had grown into adults with lives of their own. They were kind, respectful, but distant in a way that felt unfamiliar. Conversations were polite, careful, as if we were still learning how to speak to each other. I realized I didn't know them as well as I thought I did. Not their fears, not their dreams, not the small details that make a person feel known. My wife, she was still there, but something between us had changed. We had shared a house, a life even, but not always the same moments. There were years where we moved alongside each other instead of together. And now, sitting across from her in the quiet of our home, I could feel the weight of all the conversations we never had. One evening, I remember asking her a simple question. I said, "Were you happy?" I thought she would answer quickly, maybe even laugh at the question, but she paused, and that pause told me more than any words could. She said, "I learned to be." There was no anger in her voice. That was the hardest part, just acceptance. That's when it began to settle in for me. All those years I believed I was building something for my family. I was also building a distance I didn't know how to cross anymore. I had given them stability, yes. Comfort, yes. But the thing they needed most, the thing I kept postponing, was simply me, not the provider, not the man with responsibilities, just me, present, listening, available in the small, ordinary moments that I treated as unimportant. At 77, you have a lot of time to sit with your thoughts. You start to replay things, not the big achievements, not the milestones everyone celebrates, but the quiet, ordinary moments you either lived or missed, and you begin to understand which ones truly mattered. I don't regret working hard. Life requires that. But I regret believing that hard work could replace presence. I regret thinking that love could wait until I had more time to give it properly. Because love doesn't work like that. It lives in the small things, in the interruptions, in the moments that seem inconvenient when you're busy chasing something else. If I could go back, I wouldn't change everything. I would still work, still strive, still try to build a stable life. But I would sit at that table and look at my son's drawing. I would listen when my wife spoke, even if I thought I had something more urgent to do. I would understand that those moments were not distractions from life. They were life. Now, when my children visit, I listen more than I speak. I try to learn who they've become, even if I arrived late to that understanding. With my wife, I sit longer, even in silence, because I've come to realize that presence doesn't always need words. You can't undo the past. That's something you learn whether you want to or not, but you can still choose how you live with it. So if you're listening to me now, wherever you are in your life, don't make the mistake I made of thinking that what matters can wait. The people in your life, the moments you're tempted to delay, they are not standing still for you. They're moving, changing, becoming something else while you're busy looking in another direction. One day, you'll have the time you thought you needed, and when that day comes, I hope you're not sitting in a quiet room like I was, realizing that the thing you worked so hard for came at a cost you never meant to pay, because success, the kind I chased, can fill your hands, but it can also leave your heart empty if you're not careful.